Now, as we know, the US government has placed a reward of $7 million, that's around 2.5 billion naira, for anyone with credible information that can lead to the arrest of Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau. This came following last week's attack by the sect on a military base in Damboa in Borno State, killing 3 soldiers and 3 policemen. The United States government had in 2013 placed the same $7 million bounty on Shekau and has just reiterated that promise. A security expert and former assistant director of the Department of State Security, Dennis Amachree, right? joins us now in the studio to speak on Nigeria's security challenges and the international community's intervention. Good morning. And sir, we're hearing a happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're a birthday mate with our very own Ngozi.
Happy birthday to you too.
Thank you. Where's the cake?
Thank you.
The cake is coming. And happy birthday to the Vice President, Professor Yemi.
Exactly. Well,
and happy International Women's Day. Let's just celebrate.
Okay, all right.
That's a gift between the two of you. We'll let Ngozi ask the first question.
Yeah. Okay, to my birthday mate. Good to have you again on the show. Yeah. Okay, now, it's not the first time that the U.S. will be placing this bounty on Abubakar Shekau. In 2013, the same amount, was placed on him, and nothing happened.
Yes.
What does that say to you? I mean, how many years after they're coming back with the same bounty? Any guarantees that anybody's even going to,
It's a renewed bounty.
Yes.
Because 7 years ago, I think it was placed, and nobody, because these bounty things are very, very tricky. When you have some people very, very close to the target, who are very, very loyal, it becomes very difficult. It's the same thing with Osama bin Laden. It took them about 10 years or so for somebody to pick up, in that case, it was $25 million. But it was very, very difficult because people around him were too loyal to even think about the money. And then
Is it too loyal to the person of Abubakar Shekau, or too loyal to the ideology that they are fighting?
It's all in the mix. It's all in the mix, whereby they're loyal to him and they are, seriously into the ideology that he preaches to them. So for them, it becomes very, very difficult to even let out on him.
If we were to look at the specifics of the bounty, the $7 million, let's hypothetically say someone were to offer that type of information and those funds were then diverted to said person. Are there any conditions over the release of those funds, how they're expected to be spent, or are you just blindly giving money to somebody who would naturally have close proximity to a high-profile criminal? Is there no risk that those funds could be used to continue the fight?
Sometimes you have to be very, very careful about bounties because even he himself is looking for money. Shekau is looking for money. He can set up somebody to try to give some kind of information.
And that's exactly the point we're trying to make.
To get that money into his hands. But at the same time, he has to be very, very clever, to not to be arrested, because it could move into a situation where he is going to be arrested. But anyway, this bounty thing, many people are very, very worried about the protection of the person who is going to give that kind of information. And they have a protection plan. I know that the Reform Justice Program has a witness protection plan where the person who gives that information is either relocated to another place and then kept safely from any kind of retaliation. And they've done it over the years. I think they've spent almost about 150 million doing this.
So, with regards to the former leader and founder of the sect, Mohammed Yusuf, he was killed. why is it taking so long for them to find Shekau, who is not the founder, but is quite definitely the leader now? Why has it taken, this was since 2010 that he's taken ownership of this group. We're now in 2020, that's been a decade. Yeah. There have been 2 $7 million bounties placed on his head by the United States Department of Security, and then an additional bounty placed on his head by the Nigerian government.
Yes.
Is it just that he is so elusive and so good at what he does?
No. Remember, Yusuf died in detention. He was actually with the government when he died. He was killed or whatever.
He was apprehended.
Yes,
why,
he was.
Why the ability to apprehend Mohammed Yusuf and not Shekau?
Because he was available at that time, okay? And then after his death, Shekau took over. And Shekau actually started carrying arms. Yusuf was not carrying arms. Shekau carried arms and then went into the forest. You know, so that made it very difficult for people to get hold of him. And then, of course, with all the support that he's getting from different kinds of people, and then, of course, his very well-structured recruitment process, and then very well-structured organization, actually, he's been able to survive for 10 years. You know, so I think the security agencies have to sit back and redo, you know, a review what this man is all about. Yes, because he's becoming elusive.
And the fact that he, as one person, can outwit the United States Department of Security, who we know captured, like you said, Osama bin Laden, just via coordinates of the video that he released.
Well, it's not like that.
It's not as simple as that,
yeah,
but it is as simple as that.
It took the United States almost about 10 years to get Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
And it was not done through the bounty. Remember, there was 25 million on his head, but it was not through the bounty. It was through electronic, you know, geopositioning and coordinating until they got him. And it was, in fact, it was actually a mistake, an operational mistake by one of his close aides that made him got him. That's why the 25 million was not paid.
Now, let's look at the Rewards for Justice program of the U.S. I mean, does it really work when you consider that they've had this long list of terrorists on, you know, on their most wanted list, and does it really work?
It works.
But in the case of Nigeria, do you think that Nigeria really should be leading the charge in terms of, you know, placing a bounty on the head of Shekau, another
the thing is that
terrorist?
it has been a common problem even to the United States. The United States got involved because some United States citizens were, you know, killed and, you know, hitting the United Nations and stuff like that. But they are working together right now. The United States FBI or the reward justice system and the security agencies in Nigeria are working together to make sure that they do it. But they've had successes. You know, I think they've paid almost about 150 million and then relocated a lot of agents for protection into either different places, unknown areas where they are going to be safe. You know, witness protection system. Yes.
Beyond this bounty placed on terrorists, what are the other options really that, you know, countries like Nigeria can explore?
The major issue, even the United States have seen that the bounties are good, you know, actually it's like trying to appeal to somebody's greed or somebody's poverty or whatever, you know. And you can imagine if people around Shekau will be thinking, I know where this guy is.
7 million is a lot of money.
This money, especially in Nigeria, 2.5 billion, okay? And they'll be thinking, well, my life can change overnight, you know, so why don't I? Yes, exactly. So that is there, but it is very, very difficult where the person is very popular among his people, and of course, he has to take some countermeasures on how to protect himself. And then, of course, when you are in a position like that, you are really, really No, you cannot just behave like an ordinary person.
Is that where the DRR program, sorry, I know you have a question, the DRR program, the de-radicalization,
Yes.
rehabilitation and what have you that the Senate is trying to explore, is that where it comes in to actually, bring back these people, especially those who are forcefully recruited into the Boko Haram sect?
I don't very much agree with that DRR program. The Safe Corridor program is one that they could have kept those people. Releasing them into society is not a very good idea, and I maintain that because these are people that they will say whether they were forced or not, they've killed people, they've killed our soldiers, and then these soldiers are still in the war front and you release them. I don't know the rationale behind it, but it is one that bothers me a lot. But again, the security agencies can use that as a very good source of tracking this guy down. Because when you are de-radicalizing them, what are you actually doing? You are actually interrogating them. And then you are trying to change their brain and trying to find out more information about where they came from. And I am very sure they should be able to. The success I want to hear from the de-radicalization program is that we know where Shekau is. And then, of course, we don't, because you're de-radicalizing them and you're letting them go without Shekau, making new threats.
And also, what's to make them give you a proffer up information if you're simply de-radicalizing them? The way you get information from terrorists is unfortunately by torture. Unfortunately.
Whatever methods is being used, but they should be able to squeeze out some kind of information.
Absolutely. If we look at places like Guantanamo Bay,
yeah,
I know you can't say much.
No, they are still there. They are still there.
And they are still there.
They are still
Exactly.
there. Uh-huh.
If we were to look at success, I know that we only have a minute before we go to break. Perhaps we'll pick up. We will definitely pick up. But if we talk about success in this instance, even if you were to be captured or if you were to be killed, you'd be taking out the ideologist, but not the ideology itself.
Yes.
So I wonder how effective security services are looking at trying to target the ideology, because ultimately that's what's going to continue even after.
It's like Medusa. You cut off one and then the rest of the snakes keep growing.
Exactly.
But should we answer that question
We
after
will
the break?
answer the question after the break.
Okay.
Stay with us. Back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still with the Assistant Director of the Department of State Services, Dennis Amachree. Before we went to break there, I was asking you about how effective these policies are, because in as much as we can take away Shekau himself, we won't be taking away Boko Haram's ideology. What do you think needs to be done to take away the ideology itself?
Well, if you are actually fighting an ideological war, the enemy is asymmetrical, and then, of course, there are no soldiers to fight. It's in the brain. And in that case, you have to carry out serious psychological operations, especially the military are experts in that. They can carry out a counter to the version of Islam that this guy is teaching. And a lot of them know it and they mouth it, but I don't think they are actually putting it into use, because how can he continue over the years and attracting people? Although most of the people that are being attracted are not just for the ideology. Some of them are going in for the money, because they're out of poverty. He recruits, and then they can go there and do one or two things. So if there's a big push in de-radicalizing, actually means changing the minds of these people. And then, of course, trying to stop people from going to, join. And that will be by maybe looking at the fundamental issues, the root causes, and that is with poverty, unemployment, on education, and all those kind of stuff, and that way, you make sure that they don't go and get recruited, because even some people who are, in IDP camps, some of them prefer to even go back, because that's where they can get a better living. So these are things government have to look at.
Now,
Like what the
speaking
Kano
of governments,
State-
I want to switch gears very slightly because Super Tuesday just passed in the United States. And I wonder if there is a link. In fact, I don't wonder, I'm actually suggesting that there is a link between President Trump and the fact that he seemingly has devoted so much resources to Nigeria's counterterrorism fight, so much so that there's been a downhill slide, if you will, a decrease in organized attacks pre-2015 till date. Why do you think that he's devoted so much time and has re-announced that bounty?
It was not him that...
But it's under his administration.
Yeah, well, yeah, but are we going to give him the credit? That's another thing.
A controversial opinion, but the facts are the facts. It was under his administration.
The United States itself has not been very, very forthcoming. You know, we would have ended this war if the United States was right behind Nigeria. But,
During what year?
Well, whichever year. During these 10
Jonathan,
years.
for example?
Under these 10 years,
So this
yeah.
is pre-2015?
Yes,
So
because
the
I
same
know that
thing.
even when Jonathan was there, there were some U.S. Specialists that came in to help and stuff like that. And some of them left because of some disagreements and stuff like that.
Even Barlow is one of them.
You know, so these are things that they have to iron out diplomatically, of course. I don't know if this is going to be part of the elections coming up in the United States, but Trump himself, I don't think has. There is this hot and cold attitude towards Nigeria. You know, in one occasion, he will call us one kind of country.
We know the word.
You know, the others. And then in another one, he's praising us because Nigerian professionals are one of the top, top professionals in the United States.
The largest ethnic group.
So these balance, have to be created. Of course, politicians can do that very perfectly. But
Mr. Amachree, let's look at the facts. Pre-2015, there was a plethora of organized attacks across Nigeria in all states. Post-2015, it seemingly has reduced. President Donald Trump's administration has devoted a lot of financial resources and other types of resources towards the Nigerian anti-terrorism fight. These are the facts. I don't particularly like President Donald Trump, but these are the facts as pertains his administration. So my question is, what is it outside of his administration, since let's not talk about him, what has changed pre-2015 and post-2015 that we've seen a decrease in these organized attacks on Nigerian states?
I don't want to correlate what is happening to the United States, because I still maintain, that they won't even sell us arms. Even the Tocanos that we ordered are still not here. Yeah, this 220.
So why is it that when we see, when they capture certain Boko Haram members, they have United States rifles with them, with emblems on them?
There's a proliferation of small arms and light weapons all over West Africa. Some of them were even seized from the Americans that were killed in Niger. So don't be surprised about that. There are all kinds of things going on in the war front. But I don't want to correlate those, because what happened was that the face of the war changed, after 2015, where they were having some local governments in Nigeria and, of course, making an inroad, trying to declare caliphates. But after then, I think there was a hard hit when this particular military went into the war, especially the chief of staff, chief of army staff. And then they changed their tactics. They started moving into the country, not to take local governments, but to be bandits. All these bandits you're seeing are Boko Haram people. And I'm very, very happy the chief of police, the inspector general of police, have even agreed and made that same announcement, that most of these guys, because that's the terrorist form of financing themselves.
Now let's talk about another part of all of this, because you just said there's so much happening in the war front, or on the war front, if you like. There is war trauma that's setting in, where you have soldiers killing other soldiers and killing themselves. And this has started happening more frequently than we have seen before. What exactly do you think is going on?
It's a psychological problem. It's a psychological problem, and it's not uncommon when soldiers go to war. The trauma of seeing your very best friend, killed right in front of you.
PTSD.
Yeah, some died in their hands, okay? And that's why they should either make sure that they are relieving them. You know, the turnover should be more rapid. And then, of course, there should be psychologists talking to them, you know.
Those are the people that need rehabilitation, not the Boko Haram people. Yes.
You know, so when you have this kind of trauma coming, you might want to move those people out, put them under psychological, you know, care so that they could talk to them and, you know, bring them back. Because it's very, very traumatic. You know, having somebody who just ate with you and having fun, and then the next moment the person is bleeding to death in your hands, you know. So these things stick in there. And I think I've just learned that they've started introducing psychologists into different, you know, but not even there. Bring them out and let the psychologists do their job. Don't keep them in there. Change them regularly, I think, is a better deal.
Which is what a number of people like yourself have, you know, continuously called on. But the issue of, you know, the service chiefs remains on the front burner of national discourse, that there is a need, an urgent need to change the service chiefs. I wonder how much, you know, change that will bring to the fight against Boko Haram.
Well, I still maintain one thing, that is the prerogative of the president to either change or keep them. But what we really need right now is a change of strategy, a change of tactics at the war front, and new weapons. New weapons, because we really need some good weapons in there. And then, of course, new ideas can come. And, you know, if the service chiefs are going to be there, I know there are younger officers under them who are very smart and bright. They could use them. You know, the inability of our top guys not to use smart ones under them is very funny. You know, let them use those smart ones and come up with new ideas, you know, and they should be able to take care of all this.
So, Mr. Amachree, I'm going to ask you one question before we go to break. We've got about a minute left, and it's something that we were discussing on our break, and that is the instance of cloning. Now, the former Chief of Defense Staff, Alhaji Air Marshal Alamin M. Dagash, said that he wasn't sure if Abubakar Shekau was still alive because in several instances, the government claimed that they had shot and killed him. We were talking about the instance of cloning and how Shekau actually uses that to his betterment. Talk to us briefly about that.
Now, Shekau, I think this is the second Shekau that we're experiencing, because the security agencies are very much aware that the first Shekau was killed. In fact, many people won't believe it, but go to the 10 most wanted people by the FBI list. If you go there, the picture that you see there of Shekau is not the man you see right now. Yes.
Wow.
You know, there could be doubles. And even he, Shekau himself, has said it before. If you kill me today, there will be more Shekaus that are going to come out. So we find out that, yeah, they are very, very smart. And what has happened is that I think either they are having a double in there, or, you know, they've played their game in such a way that their succession plan is
They're
done.
ready for anything that comes up.
Yeah, and then the person that is there might look alike or something like that.
Terrifying.
We'll have to
Okay.
leave it there.
Well,
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Amachree, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be speaking with you again.